Alright, hello guys, how's it going? In today's video we're going to be talking about the most recent updates in the sea surface temperatures and also be talking about my current thoughts for the hurricane season and why it could be a very major one. Now before I get started with this video though, I would ask that you do subscribe if you do like weather related content, and also make sure to share this video with your friends, family, and social media. Now for today's comment of the day, I want to know how many major hurricanes, that's category 3 and above, do you think we will see this upcoming Atlantic hurricane season? Let me know in the comments down below and I'll be picking one of those for tomorrow's video. Now let's get started with this video though, and we're taking a look at our sea surface temperature anomalies here for the entire world, and you can see those blues showing up there in the Pacific, in the middle of the Pacific, just offshore of South America, and that's called our ENSO region, and that's our developing La Nina. For months now I've been saying that we would have a La Nina that begins to develop, and sure enough it is definitely taking place. The past 2 weeks have been very crucial to the development of this La Nina. Also notice that in the Atlantic we have some above average temperatures there for the Gulf, the Caribbean, and what we call our main development region, which is offshore of Africa all the way into the Caribbean there. Even though there are some near average conditions there, I guess you could say, with some of the lighter blue showing up. But really, overall, for the most part, the central Atlantic is really warmer than normal, which is very favorable for hurricane and tropical storm and all of that to develop out there in our main development region and in the Gulf, the Caribbean, or offshore of the east coast of the United States. Now we're about to move on and we're going to look at some graphs and see how far below normal the La Nina or ENSO region has really gone, and just take a look at how deep into the negatives we've gone. And we're also going to take a look at some other anomalies as well. Alright, and here's our Nino 3.4 index, and this is usually what we look at to see where our ENSO region is taking, where it's at currently. And you can see from February all the way till April 21st, it stayed pretty consistently above average there in our El Nino, but you can see pretty much after April 21st, there's been a sharp drop off. And already in May 19th, we have a negative 0.2, or probably a negative 0.3, because it's right in between the negative 0.2 and negative 0.4. So I'll call it a negative 0.3, or actually on the top right, you can see it says latest value, and it does say negative 0.3, so that's actually correct. But we're really dealing with this sharp drop off in those temperatures, and it's only going to get worse as time moves on. So we're going to start to see this move into a stronger and stronger La Nina. The more of a La Nina this turns into, the more favorable it's going to become for our hurricane season in the Atlantic. And I'll talk a little bit about why that is in just a little bit. Let's go ahead and look at our MDR sea surface temperature anomalies, and this is our main development region. So you can see that all of these are above average temperatures, which again is just going to lead to more favorable conditions for hurricanes to develop, because this is where those hurricanes begin to develop, and they like warmer than normal temperatures, obviously. So when they have those sea surface temperatures that are warmer, it's just going to be more and more favorable for hurricane development. So this is really looking like favorable conditions for hurricanes so far. Now we're about to move on and we're going to take a look at that Caribbean sea surface temperature and the Gulf of Mexico sea surface temperatures. And then we're going to get into the forecast for our future sea surface temperatures and just take a look at where we're going to be in June, July, and August as we get closer to the heart of hurricane season. So taking a look at our Caribbean sea surface temperature anomalies, you can see that there's been a drop off, and this is because the air temperature has been colder than normal, and that's led to it influencing the sea surface temperatures. So as long as that's occurring, we are going to continue to see this drop actually, if we continue to see air temperatures that are below normal. Here's the Gulf of Mexico as well, and you can see it's been warm from March 24th until about May 5th, and there's been a drop off with that one as well. So the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean are about near average. So really it's not unfavorable, but it's certainly not more favorable than what's typical either. So we're looking pretty average as far as the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico is concerned. Alright, now here is our CFS monthly forecast for our sea surface temperatures, and here's their forecast for the month of June. You can see above normal sea surface temperatures for the Gulf, the Caribbean, the East Coast, and our main development region, which again is kind of, I always say, look at the Dominican Republic and Haiti and take that all the way eastward, all the way to Africa, and that's pretty much your main development region there. That's how I usually, try to tell people where it's at. Then look at our La Nina there as well offshore of Central and South America there. You can see that it is in the, I guess, -2 degrees below normal there. So really it is looking like a pretty decent La Nina here by this point on this model once we get into about June. So what we're going to do is we're about to move on and we're going to take a look at July and then August and just take a look and see if this La Nina is going to continue to intensify or if we're going to see it really just fall off. All right, and then here we go. Here's July, and you can see that the La Nina has intensified. We're seeing some greens showing up as well now. So we're continuing to see this La Nina develop. Also, our main development region and the Gulf and the Caribbean have all warmed up since June as well, which is all leading me to believe that this hurricane season is going to be intense. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more tropical storms and tropical activity during the months of June and July, just like we saw in May. I think it's so favorable already that we are going to see those storms start to develop and continue to develop. Let's go ahead and move towards August, and you can see that the La Nina has intensified even further. We're taking a look at probably about -3.5 degrees Celsius there in our La Nina region, which is what I would call a moderate La Nina. So the CFS model has our La Nina developing very quickly and becoming very intense. Also, the Gulf and the Caribbean and the East Coast, as well as our main development region, have warmed up even further. So this is just looking like the perfect conditions for a major hurricane season, if you ask me, which is very concerning, to say the least. Let's take a look at what the average La Nina would mean for our hurricane season, and really don't pay too much attention to the Pacific unless you're actually curious, but you can see fewer hurricanes out there is what they're expecting for the Pacific during a La Nina. But look at our Caribbean and our main development region there. More hurricanes due to weaker vertical wind shear and trade winds and less atmospheric stability. There's a direct correlation between La Ninas and big hurricane years, and we're heading into a La Nina. The models are trending towards a stronger La Nina, and also with the warmer than normal sea surface temperatures there in our hurricane regions, that's just very bad news for this hurricane season, and I think it's going to be a very major one because all of our signals and anomalies are leaning towards a very major hurricane season. So all signs are pointing towards that. Here's an El Nino in case you're curious, which we've been dealing with for a few years now. Fewer hurricanes due to stronger vertical wind shear and trade winds and greater atmospheric stability. So actually the opposite there. All right. Also, now here's our CFS monthly MSLP anomaly. Basically, this is just the pressure, and you can see for the month of July, they're expecting lower pressure in the Gulf and the Caribbean. I found this very interesting because I think this is actually going to lead towards development of tropical activity. If this model is correct, it's calling for lower pressure on average in the Gulf and the Caribbean, which is just going to mean this model is probably eyeballing the chance for tropical activity in those regions. Then by the time we hit August, you can see it really just explodes and we see well below normal pressure for the Gulf, the Caribbean, the middle of the Atlantic. So this model is really thinking we're going to have a huge hurricane season here according to its pressure forecast. All right, now we're about to move on, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at my latest hurricane season overall forecast that I released a little bit ago, and then we're going to take a look at how Arthur did, our first tropical storm we had, Tropical Storm Arthur, and then we're going to get into our comment of the day. All right, and here's my latest forecast, and I'm still sticking to this. It's still looking great because of the fact that really all signs, like I said, are leaning towards a much more major hurricane season than what is typical. I think a much above average season. First off, our main development region, which is in that red, again, you can really just to locate this region, just look at Haiti and Dominican Republic and take it eastward all the way to Africa, like I said. And that's that whole red region there. Very favorable conditions in our main development region because a La Nina, then we have above average sea surface temperature. These are the two most important things for hurricane development on a climate scale. Then also warmer than normal conditions there for portions of the Gulf of Mexico and south of Cuba. So we're really going to be seeing warmer than normal sea surface temperatures there. Best chance for landfall this year, I think, is going to be in the Gulf and Florida. And I think the East Coast is going to be a wild card. Really, it just depends on what the high pressure systems look like in the Atlantic, because for it to head up the East Coast, we need a high pressure system in the right region. However, I think there will be so many homegrown systems, which is what we call systems that develop in the Gulf, that I think that's going to be the best chance for landfalling hurricanes, and usually it is, so it's not too hard to predict that. But again, our East Coast is our wild card region, and what that means is I really think it could swing either way. We could see really no landfalls for the East Coast, or we could see a couple. It really just depends on, again, where that high pressure system sets up in the Atlantic. Now again, here was Tropical Storm Arthur's track, and you can see it developed as a low pressure system just to the north of Cuba, tracked just next to Miami, and actually they saw some of the most impacts from this one. And then it headed up basically mostly northward, but northeastward, and you can see this is actually a little bit outdated because it's completely past Hatteras and the Outer Banks, but as of this point, it came very close to Hatteras. In one of my coming videos, I will update you guys on the full track of this storm. But for now, this was basically the track that it took as of, I would say, yesterday morning. This was probably where this was updated to. Now, a lot of people are saying this is meaning that we're going to have a huge hurricane season. And obviously, throughout this video, you heard me say that I do think it will be a huge hurricane season. However, just because we have a May tropical storm does not mean we're going to see tons of tropical activity. Keep that in mind. Also, if 2019 last year was an example of what we could expect this year, a May tropical storm could be followed by a very quiet June and July. As you can see here, we only had one hurricane in July and we had no activity in June, and then the whole first two-thirds of August were very quiet. And then obviously we know what happened last year with Dorian and everything that followed. Tons of tropical activity after about August 20th. It just was followed by an incredible amount of tropical storms and hurricanes. So just because you have no activity through the halfway point of August doesn't mean you're going to have a huge hurricane season afterwards. These hurricane seasons can switch on a dime, and that should be a great example of that. All right, now for today's comment of the day, I asked you guys, do you think there will be a high-risk severe weather day this year? We're already to May 19th, and there hasn't been. Jaden Bishop said a high risk is possible, I would say, and I think that's a good comment, and I basically agree with that because it's really impossible to say because 4 days from now there could be a high risk. We really don't know, because they can sneak up on you like that. You don't see it 2 weeks out, so we could have one at some point still during the later portion of May, and we just don't see it yet. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, be sure to share it with your friends, family, and social media. I will see you guys in the next video.